Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Simply Nerdy. I'm your host, Austin, and today, Steve and Anthony and I from the panel are thrilled to be joined by a true powerhouse in the board game industry, Mr. John Clair himself. And if you've spent any time around a game table, chances are you've encountered one of John's incredible creations. He's known for his innovative mechanics and thematic depth. John has brought us unforgettable games like Mystic Vale, which introduced the unique card crafting system, the strategy-packed Space Base as another example, and the ambitious narrative-driven adventure Dead Reckoning. He's a designer who consistently pushes the boundaries of tabletop gaming, and now he's taken the monumental task of bringing the epic Mistborn universe to life in the form of a deck-building game. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on. That was a perhaps overly generous introduction, but I'll take it.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. You deserve it.
Absolutely.
So I guess just to start, how did you get started in your career as a board game designer? Where did it all begin?
I mean, as like a lot of game designers, I was a nerdy kid. I really liked board games, and that's sort of where it all began. I think I designed my first playably fun game when I was 9 years old. I had designed unplayably unfun game prior to that. And then it was just a thing I did as a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult, and I had the hope, the aspiration to make money doing it at some point, and I sort of set that as a goal after I'd graduated college, and then had some good fortune, had some good ideas, and started working out.
No, that's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, so this was kind of something that you already knew from a young age that this was something you wanted to do. That's really
yeah,
cool.
I mean, I envisioned it as I enjoy doing that. Wouldn't it be cool if I made money on it one day? And then I had actual plans for a career that is normal. Those normal plans were going, and then the board game stuff started working. I was like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to move on to that. Yeah.
Why would you move on to anything else?
Exactly. I had taken a class at the university where we did video game designing, but we actually had to make a board game version of a game that we wanted to design and to play test it. And I was kind of curious about your experience playtesting. How does that kind of work when you're playtesting your games, whether that's Mistborn or one of the other games that you design? What does your playtest process look like?
I have, at this point, depending on where in my career you ask me that question, the answer is slightly different, but I'll answer it as it is now. I host playtest days at my house frequently. They are either a curated selection of specific people I know who I want to test a very specific game or change to a game. Sometimes it's people I've never played it before. Sometimes it's specifically people who have played it before. And then I'll also do bigger game days where I invite other local game designers, and they'll bring their prototypes and we'll play each other's stuff. I go out occasionally when the opportunity arises to go play at other people's places. Other game designers in the LA area host game days and stuff. Lately, doing it at my place has been the most convenient because I got kids, so I can sort of help my wife watch the kids while running some playtests and stuff.
Yeah, back to that.
Yeah, but it depends on what game I'm testing, what the goal of the specific test is. Yeah, it's fun. Some days it's a long day of work, playing games from 11 till 7 at night, right? But it doesn't feel like work, so
Yeah,
absolutely.
Very fortunate that way.
it's a job that you can enjoy, so that's good.
Yeah.
When everyone leaves for the end of the day, and then I have to write up the notes and go make sure I don't forget all the stuff.
Yes.
That's where the work really kicks in. But
Yeah, that's true.
How do you collect all that feedback that you get from Dragonsteel? Because I know you've also done playtesting in Dragonsteel, though I've never been able to participate in the Stormlight RPG, unfortunately. Though I've always wanted to. It fills up so fast. But how do you end up gathering all that feedback at the end of the day? Is that a long night for you, just writing that all down?
So at Dragonsteel Nexus, I was it wasn't so much playtesting. Not that the plays with the fans aren't useful input for expansion ideas, or like fixes to the rulebook if we realize we got an error in there.
Right.
So that was all quite useful. It wasn't so much at that point the game was done though, right? So we weren't corralling feedback on whether people liked it or not and what we should change, so much as just getting it out in front of people, having them play it, and demo it. So,
Nice. Makes sense.
and to be clear, I'm unaffiliated with the design of the
RPG.
Stormlight RPG.
Okay.
Not that I'm not jealous of the people who did get to work on it.
For sure.
RPGs. To be fair, RPGs are not my thing. I like them, but I would rather play board games all day than an RPG all day. So,
Oh man.
I'm not. It's not
Makes sense
as
to
much
me.
my thing.
That's awesome. Well, you had also mentioned the possibility of expansions. That's a question that's been, I think, on everybody's mind that's played this Mistborn game. I don't know if that's something that you're able to answer, but do you have any plans for potential expansions, maybe introducing Feruchemy or Hemalurgy from the Mistborn series?
What a good pointed question. Yes. The answer is yes, and yes. Yeah, there was always intended to be expansions. We designed the base game with, the thoughts to make expansions in mind to begin with. So the base game, if you're familiar with the book series, and you've played the base game of Mistborn, you'll recognize that there aren't much in the way of spoilers outside of book 1. There's a few images where you're like, what is that giant beast creature there? I've never heard of that before, right? But it's not like it's telling you anything that is going to change, that's going to inform you about what happens in the next books. And that was an intentional design decision to mostly keep all of the art, the characters, the world, the missions, right? Mostly restricted to book 1. The expansion that I'm working on now mostly keeps away any spoilers that would tell you about what happens in book 3, but will be full of spoilers for book 2 if you haven't read it yet. So so we're introducing more missions that apply to the things that happened in book 2, more characters appropriate, like we learn about a new Mistborn in book 2, right?
Okay.
Right? So that will be a new playable character.
Sick.
That's
we
awesome.
also the base game has basically one solo co-op version that you can play where you challenge the Lord Ruler together or solo. My goal with the expansions is that each of the expansions would introduce a new solo or co-op challenge.
Oh baby, let's go.
All right.
Obviously, thematically appropriate to book 2 and then to book 3.
This is
I'm
the type
so
of
there.
smorgasbord of information we were hoping to get. I was coming into this just being like, I sure hope that they've got, he's got plans for expansion stuff.
I mean, I should say
great.
everything I'm saying here is subject to change.
Sure.
It's all stuff that Brotherwise and I have discussed, but we're in the playtest stage of this, so it's all subject to change. But I don't expect the broad strokes to be vastly different than what I'm saying, but
Okay.
theoretically they could be.
So I'm curious, by the way. So it sounds like you're so far describing expansions that will kind of go in lockstep with the plot order in the books.
Yep.
Is there potential for you also covering the second era of Mistborn?
Yeah, we've talked about it. That's further in the future. So
Right.
Our ideas are more vague as opposed to more concrete things that we've actually put pen to paper on. The vision as it stands now, and this one, like I said, is subject to change, but probably more so. My current vision would be when we get to Wax and Wane, we would introduce a new standalone core box, which ideally I would like to design it such that it's compatible play-wise. So if you want to play out the fan fiction of Vin versus Wax, right, just like see how that goes.
No way.
You could, right? But it
That'd
wouldn't
be
be
awesome.
like an expansion to that. In that, you need to have the Vin and Kelsier box in order to play with the Wax and Wane box.
Gotcha.
Right. It would be a new one with all the. You could just get that one if you want it. But then if you, like I said, if you want to play the fan fiction of like Era 1 characters versus Era 2 characters, or like whatever.
It's a nice way to keep it modular and not require the base game. Yeah, I like that.
It's also right, like if you really know if you know the lore, right, then, the big difference between Era 1 and Era 2 when it comes to the way the game works is there really aren't Mistborns in Era 2, right? They are, they're like the people like Wax and Wayne are like a mix of Fairchemy and with a Mistling essentially, right?
Yeah, the Twinborn.
Thank you, Twinborn.
Yes.
So how that functions is different than, like, you can't have, if you're familiar with the game, it wouldn't make sense thematically that you would have a tableau of all 8 metals to burn, right?
Right.
Unless we change some premises, like instead of having a single character, you have Wax and Wayne, or Wax and somebody else. So that gives you access to a couple more metals or something, right? But we'd have to change that premise. So like, I would be starting from the cards would be compatible with the 2 games, but your starting deck might be quite a bit different than just like sort of derivative of the original box, right?
And also potentially the tableau being fundamentally different.
That's
really
interesting. Of your metal tokens and stuff. So
right.
That's all. This is more all conceptual, because this is not the imminent thing is the first expansion for the Mistborn game, the second expansion for the Mistborn game, the Stormlight Archive board game, which, as I said in the preamble before we started recording, is not secret, but I'm also not announcing it officially here.
You heard it here first, though.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow,
that's so exciting.
I mean, unofficial or not, just the fact that we're hearing it from you is exciting. And
sure.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I think I speak for all of us in saying that we've all thoroughly enjoyed it. I think,
for sure.
I think all 3 of us here were, big Mistborn fans for some time before, the release of the game. But it's just been really fun to see, the deep lore of that world so effectively turned into, such an enjoyable board gaming experience.
Yeah, it's been great to hear. It's been great to hear the fans respond to it. There's of course the feedback about how good it looks, right, and that the art is great, and it's spot on. And that is something that Johnny O'Neill from Brotherwise, man, he is good at that. He is really good at art direction and just getting that stuff on. And then obviously all the artists execute it really well, and it's great. That doesn't speak to anything I did though, right?
Right.
So it's nice to hear when fans say like the metal system in the game feels like the Mistborn, because like that was my main design goal, was to capture something, to some degree, the experience of like strategically burning this metal in combo with this metal in order to get this effect, right? And have some of that, because so much of the book, so much of the evocative parts of the book are those battles between the Mistborns, where they're being clever with the usage of various metals to do different things, right? And I wanted that the game to somehow capture that feeling to a certain extent. So hearing the feedback that people have felt that way is great.
Yeah, you nailed it with that, because I actually understood the books better because of how the game was designed. Like, oh, that's what flaring a metal means. That's what burning a metal is, and that's kind of it just made everything make a lot more sense. But like, how did you approach adapting Brandon Sanderson's novel of Mistborn into a game format? Like, how did you even get started? What were like some of your inspirations behind creating this game?
Yeah, so there's probably 2 parts to that question. So the part I would take is sort of from a game designer's approach. I am, as a game designer, very inclined to try to not do derivative game designs, in the sense that make a game that leans extremely heavily on a whole bunch of already popular games, right? I would prefer my games not to be easily replaceable with existing games. But to a certain extent, the requirement for me that the game be the gameplay, the rules of the game be super unique and different, is mitigated when you're working with a a property like Mistborn, where a lot of the value people get out of it is the fact that they're getting to play in the world of the characters and the story and the vocabulary that they care about, right? So my goal with designing Mistborn was less so, as it often is with games that aren't based on IP, to create some super original game, but rather to make a game that is A, really good, B, works for the fans of the games, but also whatever it is that is the most standout part of the game relative to other existing games is spot on Mistborn, right? And everything else, I'm more okay with being sort of derivative of existing successful games that I can take design learnings from. So, there's a whole bunch of other game designers and games that I can credit for informing for doing it first, right? So like, Dominion created deck building game as like a game, right? I didn't invent deck building.
Absolutely.
Right.
Sure.
Ascension created the row of cards in the market. That was the first game that was deck building with a variable market like that, right? And there's been a bunch of games that have mimicked Ascension in that like variable market that you can buy from. Games like Star Realms and Shards of Infinity did now let's make it feel like you're fighting each other with health points and stuff, right? The thing that was most important for me with this design was to if I'm gonna put anything unique and different in this game that isn't just like, I know this works, I'm gonna put it in the game because other games have done it well. Like whatever that thing is, it has to be super Mistborn. And it felt to me like getting the medal system as a resource management factor in like all the decisions you make, it's to some degree or another, was the most important thing. So like the beginning problem was, how do I make a game where you're managing 8, and if you include ATM 9 different resources, and also make it like not a super complicated game for heavy gamers, but accessible to fans of the Cosmere who may like board games, but they're not like deep into the board game lore. They may never have played a deck builder before, right?
Yeah.
So how do I make it accessible for them while offering a gameplay where you have to manage 8 different resources, right? Generally a game with 8 different resources, like you're pulling tokens, you're moving up tracks, you have to do something to manage that, and there's a lot of fiddliness to that. There can be, which board gamers have a tolerance for. They're like, yeah, resource management, right? And a lot of times that's just like, it's like mental overload for someone who isn't already familiar with how deck building works to begin with, right?
That's true.
Yep.
So that was the main conundrum, the main question at the beginning of the design process. How do I capture the metals? How do I capture a resource management system across 9 different metals, while not burdening the gameplay with that management? And I often in my game design process, it's a sort of a technique I call kinetic design, which is just a term I just made up, but I think it describes well sort of my approach to solving game design problems often, which is to use the physicality of the components to inform the design possibilities or to solve design problems, as opposed to like come up with the rules and then look for components to fit the rules. It's like, what components make sense? Given those components, what rule or gameplay possibilities are there? So when you're thinking about the Mistborn world, what is a component that the game like really should have to feel Mistborn? Well, coins probably, right? To some degree, coins should be something you're moving around and using a lot. And when I finally, the solution I finally landed on was like, well, instead of 8 different resources that have to, you have to move tokens in and they have to pay tokens, grab tokens, or you have like slider tracks for 8 different things. What if it's just 8 coins that are either they're just like, you either have the resource or you don't have the resource. And we just simplify it to that level. And once I had that, I was like, okay, that's the crux of it. Now I have to just like fit that into a gameplay that works. Yeah, long rambling answer. I hope I think I answered it.
No, you did.
You did.
More
And you
than
nailed
answered
it.
it. It was
by the way.
great.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I deserve another sip of coffee.
Nailed it.
I think
Yes.
it's very cool how it's so intricate how, even having the vials on certain cards and the savant
Yes.
abilities
Yes.
and of course, like you mentioned, all of the lore of the different allies and adversaries. It's just so well and meticulously crafted.
Well, correct. A lot of credit for that stuff also needs to go to the development team at Brotherwise, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of the fitting the effects that I created, and sometimes tweaking them, but also fitting them to like the thematically appropriate characters and stuff. That was like I made a first draft of that, and then they took it. I made a first draft, and then a second draft, and a third draft, right? But then at some point they took it, and really nailed it. They were like, what does a coin shot do? What is right?
Yeah.
With a couple exceptions, the really notable one, which we've already talked about, I should mention just because it's funny, is that there's an ability called Riot in the game.
Yes.
And there's an ally you can get called a Rioter, and the Rioter does not have the Riot ability.
Yeah.
So this is a note that we're like, maybe when we make a second edition, we should fix that.
That's awesome.
That would make sense. But what an awesome collaborative effort with
Right.
Brotherwise. I think and just to kind of take a step back and going to kind of where this all started on a project like this, this would be something, I guess, for the aspiring board game designers who want to work with licensed properties. So I wanted to ask you, when you started working on this project, who contacted who first? Did you reach out to Brotherwise Games? Did they contact you first, knowing your history of board game designing, or how did that all play out?
Yeah, so the two O'Neill brothers are both local to LA, so am I. And we had been on panels together at like a Comic-Con. Chris O'Neill and I had chatted about board games. So I think as a designer within driving distance of them, I was sort of, I imagine I was in their mind as a option were they to need an outside designer for a project. So I think when they had the opportunity, or they were pursuing the opportunity to make Cosmere board games, I was on their list of people to possibly work with, because they knew me, and also there's advantages to just being local, right? So they reached out to me and they were like, hey, do you know Brandon? Do you read Brandon Sanderson? Do you do you know the Stormlight Archive? And I literally at the time was in the middle of book 3 of the Stormlight Archive. And I was like in this video call with Johnny, I think it was, and maybe it was Chris, and I was like, well, I'm in the middle of this book right here. I just like reached over and grabbed it.
Nice.
Like, yes, I am a fan.
Nice.
Was that Oathbringer then, you said? The third book?
Oathbringer, yeah.
That's what I'm in right now. I'm working my way through Stormlight, so that's so cool.
Not short books.
No.
It's
So we actually basically discussed doing a Stormlight board game first. And then in the process of that being delayed for many reasons, and them essentially deciding they were going to do the RPG first, they were like, we also need a Mistborn deck building game, which I was like, I'll do it. And I remember they asked me, they were like, well, would you rather do the Stormlight game or that we talked about potentially doing, or switching and doing the Mistborn game? And I was like, yes.
Whatever you want to put me on, I'll do it.
Yes, both is the answer. Yeah. And they were like, we'll get back to you. And then they were like, all right, yes, we're gonna make the Mistborn game together.
Wow, that's so cool.
I was just wondering if you had any tips and tricks for defeating the Lord Ruler in cooperative mode with 4 people, or if you could share any of your favorite tips and tricks for the game for any new players or people that are trying to master the game.
Yeah. So the butts kicked.
Yeah, I know. So people having a hard time with the solo. I can beat the solo mode consistently, and
I haven't tried, to be honest.
With co-op with players who have reasonable experience, it's beatable. It's not supposed to be easy. It's designed to be hard.
No, and we appreciate that. I like
Yeah,
this.
no, it's been a feature.
Yeah. One of the most disappointing. I think one of the most disappointing things about co-op games that are otherwise well designed is if they're too easy, right? Like I want to feel like I'm reaching for it and challenge and trying to win, and then often failing, right? So I want to come back. Yeah. So I mean, how do you beat them? You need to be. The decisions you make cannot. You have to be very specific about the decisions you make on the cards you buy. And this is true if you want to win competitively, also against good players. But once you get good at the game, it's not just like, ooh, which of these cards looks fun and I think I want to buy, but it's very specifically that card costs 6 and I can afford it, but this card that costs 3 is actually like the one that I need to solve my current problem or to do this thing, right? So it's you be very specific about that. You want to lean into the metal that your character incentivizes you to do, but don't overly think about that, right? It's not I think people can get a little too like, my character's, I'm playing Kelsier, he's good at steel, so all I want to buy is steel and iron cards, and that is not true. The game is designed very much for you to strategically be able to lean a lot into a single type of metal, or sort of go wide and do multiple, and often the winning strategy is strategically planning for and tactically doing whatever mix is appropriate given the options you have, as opposed to trying to force one strategy or another, right? There's almost always a good option. There's almost always a good option. It's just not necessarily the option that you want it there to be. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So strategic flexibility is essential, right? Because the market doesn't just give you what you want.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
And the second ability on the heroes, you got to use it. Like if you're not mid game, you want to get your deck to a certain point, and then only add additional cards to it that are very specifically effective in your deck, right? You don't keep loading it. But that ability to buy a card, chuck it, and use it right away means your money isn't useless, right? Your money, even though you don't necessarily want to be doing as much buying, you want to be using your money to get stuff, right? Another thing I see people do is on the mission tracks, you don't just want to blitz up a mission track and just like, woohoo, knock it off. Like you want to, like the ones that give like coins, right? You almost want to get right below it, and then like that means you can convert a mission point into money essentially. Whenever you need that extra money. So like you get right to the point where you're almost about to get money, and then switch to another track, right, until you need that money. So like all of that is very tactical things. If you want to beat the hard co-op solo game, like you have to get those decisions right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. I haven't tried yet. I'm going to.
The funny thing is, so my wife and I, we're really big into the game right now. We've been playing it like a whirlwind. My wife even more so, is just super into it. And we keep on trying to figure out the puzzle of the 4-player approach to strategizing, because we've gotten to a point where the two of us, we win like most of the times that we try. Usually it's some sort of really bad RNG. We pull a triple dominance when he's close to the bottom of the track. Yeah. When we, when we lose.
The triple dominance is the. I played it the other day, and I hesitate to count it as a win, or I hesitate to count it as a loss, because there was 26 cards left in his deck, and only one of them could kill me, and it was the triple dominance one.
Oh no!
And I was one turn away from winning. I was like, all I have to do is not pull the 1 in 26 cards that could kill me. And of course, that was it. And I was like, this is only kind of a loss.
Yeah.
We've had a few though where it's like, that didn't actually happen.
Yeah.
But,
thank goodness for house rules. Am I right?
Yeah. So we've gotten really consistent with 2-player, 3-player. We can manage decently well. But we still haven't figured out the right balance with 4-player, and I feel like our problem so far has been, I mean, you level up so much more slowly with respect to the Lord Ruler's actions that, you can't like get up to that level 3 ATM ability with any reliability. You're probably going to get wiped long before that. And so, I don't know. I mean,
So, wait. How are we doing spoilers on here or no?
Yeah, we can.
Spoilers,
Yeah,
fine.
we'll just say spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning.
Much like Kelsier, one player may need to sacrifice themselves.
Okay. My wife is going to be so happy to hear you say that, because
Yes, she is.
I want to try this. We need to try a sacrificial lamb at some point.
So importantly, you are able to defeat allies on other players, right?
Yes.
But in order to win, much like the book, only one person needs to be left to defeat the Lord Ruler, right? So you need to make sure one person's got stacked life, right, and a lot of combat, while everyone else whittles those missions down as much as they can, and worries less about survival themselves, right?
Dang.
Yeah, once you get the missions, it's really just about racking up damage.
You keep that one person who's like been buying the big damage cards. You keep them alive until you've knocked off at least 2 of the missions, right? And try not to be too redundant with the same people doing the same mission, right? In some cases, you want to, because those bonuses are really meaningful.
Sure.
And it's useful, but try not to be too redundant with it. Keep a player who can really hit hard alive, so that once you got those missions down, that person's got enough life to hit multiple turns before their life goes down, with them left or them and one other person left to really smack them pretty hard. Yeah.
Okay.
Love it.
I'm gonna have to have her watch this video, and she's going to, shout, I knew it. He's, the designer himself. He said it.
I have another question. Since we're talking about Lord Ruler in the co-op mode, we've been talking with some other nerds across not only our community but other communities out there as well. And there's been some talk saying maybe Lord Ruler is a tad too hard. Has there ever been a time where you thought like maybe we'll have like an easy mode, a normal campaign, or like a hard mode or extra hard mode, or how did you come to that decision?
Yeah. I don't want to get into complaining about production decisions that I was not responsible for. But my original solo mode did have the intent that there would be, an easier mode and a harder mode, and without further explanation, it did. That didn't end up in the final version.
Right.
I think Brotherwise has absorbed the feedback, and I don't want to speak for them, but they're discussing whether they can do anything about that.
Yeah.
An intro mode would have been a good idea, and maybe even an extra hard mode.
As if it's needed.
Let's go. We love the difficulty.
Oh yeah.
We
It's
love
good.
it. Perfect.
No, I mean, obviously, if there's only going to be one mode, it's better to have the hard mode.
Yeah,
Agreed,
absolutely.
It's very lore accurate, and I kind of figured that was at least in part, behind the decision.
Yeah.
Well, so earlier you were talking about how you tried to keep like the characters and the abilities limited to the scope of the first book, which was something else I found vindicating, because I remember saying that very thing. Like, I wonder, some of these, like, why did they pick Sean of all people as because she is a Mistborn.
There actually aren't that many named Mistborn at all.
Yeah.
In the 3 books, they're like, there's, in the first book, it's Shan, Kelsier, and Vin. That's it, right? We include Marsh because kind of, right?
Kind of, right.
Yeah.
Close enough. Yeah.
And then in book 2, there's two Mistborn, right? There's one that's named and one that like she kills in like the first chapter and is unnamed, right? And then there may be a spoiler one at the end of book 2 that shows up, but there just aren't that many named Mistborn actually anyway. So Shan was an obvious inclusion, I thought.
Yeah. No, I mean,
it was perfect.
After kind of looking into it, I was like, no, I can see what they were going for here. There's only so many options to pick from.
Yeah.
But
Shan's fun. I actually like playing her. The 2 money boost is fun.
Yeah.
I like to think of games designed based on like an existing property, like the Mistborn, right? Not as simulations of what happened in the story, but like fan fiction opportunities to play out a would-be fan fiction of what could have happened, right? So you can imagine a fan fiction version where Shan wins the fight, right? You know.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, it's been fun, and I was gonna say, in terms of like thematic appropriate in this, and lore accuracy, I was at one point when we'd suffered a few, resounding defeats in a row. I was like, I almost wonder if this was also a thematic choice. Like they made the Lord Ruler so hard that he kind of just pushes us to infight instead. Like don't challenge me, just go back to competitive. So, but we keep coming back. We keep trying to take him down, and I'm, every time we have, because of course in the moment it's frustrating. It's like, oh my gosh, we were either really close or not close at all. But
And then you pop that one dominance thing that just like,
yeah,
Yes.
but then we always come back for more. So
No, absolutely.
a well-designed game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's just a few questions that we also had clarification-wise around the game, but before we jump into that, I did want to ask more of just a fun question. So if you were a Mistborn, which metal would you burn the most and why?
Excluding ATM. Just looking at it. Excluding ATM.
I mean, who doesn't want to fly? I mean, my immediate answer would be steel.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't want to fly, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I assume I'm in the Mistborn world. I'm not like, I haven't been granted Mistborn powers on Earth. Because otherwise, I'd end up in some research laboratory if I was flying around. But sorry, I think about these when people people ask these hypothetical questions. I think about these things. I'm like, I've had long conversations with my friends. The silly debates of like, wouldn't it be cool to fly? And I'm like, no, it wouldn't. Like,
No.
like it would be cool until you got shot down as a UFO by the military.
Ability to fly in our world is a one-way ticket to Area 51.
Yes.
I love it. That's awesome. You got a point, though. He's got a point.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's my answer. I have to get more thought what he could really do with the other ones, but probably flight. Give me some steel push.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's
Good
great.
answer.
Just some other thoughts though. I'm curious for those of us who've been enjoying the Mistborn deck building game, what other games that you've designed would you recommend checking out for those of us who haven't necessarily had the chance to experience more of your works yet?
Mm-hmm. So the correct answer as a independent businessman is all of them.
That's good answer.
So my most popular game to date in terms of sales and consistent, long-lasting popularity is Space Base. Also, if you are someone who likes board games but isn't into board games, if you know what that means, Space Base is fairly easy to learn, quick to play, gives you a nice strategic crunch, but is mostly a sort of fun Wahoo type game. If you want a party game, I designed a game called Ready Set Bet, which is very much a Wahoo party game, but it's not a party game in the sense that there aren't any strategic choices and it's all just silly. It's got a little probability choice, but like very light in like, if you want to think about the probability, it'll give you a slight advantage, or you could just not think about it. And then if you want a crunchier game, my most popular, like really crunchy thinky game is Dead Reckoning, which also features the card crafting system that I created. It's a big pirate game, high seas adventure, sort of sandboxy, sail around and do stuff, and be a pirate if you want to, or just a privateer.
Great.
And that one's more on the complicated end, but if you're down for that, it's a good one. if you want a not too complicated but really crunchy game. Crunchy is a board. If you're not a board gamer, crunchy is a term like there's a lot to chew on strategically.
Sure.
Is what that means. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I enjoy a good strategic crunch, so that's definitely
Absolutely.
something I'm interested in.
Yep.
So cool.
sure.
I'm gonna have to check out more of those. So maybe first.
I'm gonna toss in one
Go for it.
more if I
Go for
can.
it.
It's not out yet. It's coming out very soon. If you like deck builders, if you like
Yes.
1 to 2 player co-op games to play with your partner, I made a game called Unstoppable that will be out, I think, February.
I was just reading up about that actually.
Oh, wow.
It also
Yeah,
has the
so-
card crafting in it as well,
Yeah,
right?
it does have some card crafting.
Yeah.
That is not based on an IP, and it is one of my most unique game systems. Very different. It very much not derivative of anything that exists.
Nice.
So if you're interested, if you like deck building and you like co-op with like a one or 2 player co-op, I would recommend that one.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
There
gonna
you
have
have
to
it.
get, I mean,
For that one.
that's deck building. Deck builders are probably my favorite type of board game. Dominion is one of my all-time favorite games, and so
It's a great one. Yep.
yeah. So and I love what you were talking about earlier about your design methodology, kind of focusing on originality and non-derivative design choices. That's absolutely one of the things that is a huge draw for me. So now that my previous experience with the Mistborn properties has exposed me to your designs, I'm definitely gonna have to dig in.
Good.
For sure.
Hopefully they live up to the expectations.
It sounds
sure
like
they
they've got a good chance of it. So I think that answers one of the questions I was going to ask. Just regarding upcoming projects. It sounds like we've got one very, very soon around the corner.
Yeah.
Maybe just the last one, before we close out, is we're curious, what is your favorite board game, or maybe top 3, whatever you want to present of all time? Like what's the one you would always pick first if you?
So that's a different question. The game I would recommend the quickest to play with people is not necessarily the game I've had the most fun playing.
Okay.
Right.
Tell us
Or
both,
the
perhaps.
game I would be the most excited to play. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like if you ask someone their favorite book, it's or favorite movie, right? Though actually, recently I have actually decided on an answer for both of those.
Nice.
Let's hear it. I'm curious.
I'm curious.
So I for a long time my answer was Lord of the Rings,
Mhm.
Yes.
Solid.
and I hadn't reread it in like 20 years though. I read it like 4 times. So I read it when I was like 10 for the first time, and then I read it before The Fellowship came out, which was when I was like 12 or something like that. And then I read it again before The Two Towers and again before The Return of the King. So I read it like 4 times as a young teenage, like an early teen, and kid. And then I hadn't read it since, and I reread it recently, and I was like, this is my favorite book. Locked in, yeah. And then I watched the movies again in theaters because they're in LA. They were in theaters, and I'm like, this is also my favorite movie. Though you have to combine the whole Lord of the Rings into one.
Yes, and the
Only
extended
one.
edition as well.
It's one movie. It's not 3 movies. You asked about board games though. That answer, that if you force me to give an answer, my answer has been Seven Wonders.
Oh, okay.
Which is so Seven Wonders, I think hits a fantastic sweet spot that is so hard to get in game design, where it plays to what you want out of the game. You can find out of the game in terms of strategic depth. You can play it really casually and it's fun and you have a chance at winning, or you can play it really strategically, where you're looking at your hand of cards and you're like, he's probably going to take this one, she's probably going to take that one, okay, so that means I should probably take this one because this one will come back to me. And you can do all that depth if you want to, or you can just be like, which one of these do I want? And it does both of those so well. Like, both of those can be at the same time, and it plays up to 7 players. I like games with full tables.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
And I like strategy games with full tables. I also like party games with full tables, but if a strategy game can fill up a table and play in 45 minutes to an hour, that's great. I mean, I also don't mind really long epic games either, but So that's my typical answer. You know, Magic the Gathering also probably deserves like a favorite game spot. It's easily the most influential game of my design career in terms of I played it early on, and I still play it now, and it's great, right?
Nice.
Best gaming experience ever, best strategy game experience thing that just really stuck with me was Diplomacy. As you can see, I'm all over the spectrum here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that game, the mind games in that game are so good. If you like them and you have the emotional fortitude to handle your friends lying to your face for 4 hours.
Wow, that's wonderful.
So those are my three.
That's awesome.
Very nice. Yeah, it's been fun chatting with you, and we appreciate you giving us your time to let us pick your brain and just talk about how much fun we've been having with the Mistborn game.
Great. Yeah.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the Stormlight. That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As well as some of the other ones, like Unstoppable.
Secret, not so secret. Secret, not so
Yes.
secret.
Not secret, not so secret. Yes.
You're allowed to spread rumors. You're just not allowed to have any more info about the rumors yet.
That's right. There you go.
That's fair.
Cool. Well, thanks again, John. We really do appreciate your time with us and all these questions that you've answered for us. If you're a viewer watching this, be sure to go check out John's games, especially Unstoppable, coming out in the near future here. And anything else that we need to add before we...
John, is there a question you wish we would have asked that we did not ask that you...
No, this was a great chat. This was great chatting with you guys. That's a deeper question that I'm prepared to answer right now.
That's fair. Maybe in a future interview.
What question could you have asked? You know.
Yeah.
Yep. That's fair.
Great. Well, thanks again, and thank you everyone for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe and like, and ring that notification bell. And be sure to leave a comment letting us know what maybe one of your favorite games are, or if you've been enjoying the Mistborn game. We'd really love to hear your feedback. And until next time, keep it nerdy.